So my name is Sudhir. I work as a support escalation engineer with Microsoft SD Insight support team. Before I go ahead and start off, how many of you heard about Hadoop or maybe big data? Just raise your hands. Okay, that's cool, fantastic. How many of you heard about SD Insight service? Microsoft, Windows, Azure, SD Insight service, only user? One? Okay. All right. Now that's sad. Okay. I'll quickly give you an understanding of it. How many of you understand of pig, which I'm going to talk about today? All right. I see 4 or 5 hands. At what level, sir? I mean, at beginner level. Just raise your hand if you are at beginner level. Okay. Cool. So my job in next 45 minutes is to make sure that whatever I'm talking about, you guys understand it. Whatever I'm going to show, you guys easily able to follow with me. I'm not going to talk about much in deep technical troubleshooting techniques, though I can, but that's not the intent for today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. So the people who are not, that's the agenda that I'm going to talk about. So we'll go ahead and start with a quick overview because majority of the people are not known about what is PIG is all about. We'll talk about how it works behind the scenes. It has its own engine. It doesn't work as a service. It has its own engine, which does a couple of jobs for you before it sends the MapReduce jobs to the Hadoop. And then we'll get into the demonstration. So if you are from marketing background or sales people, this session is not for you because I'm not going to talk about sales and marketing stuff over here. I'm just going to talk about the technical stuff. What is PIG all about is, and when I'm going to run the demos, I'll just go ahead and run some PIG commands. We'll talk about how we can create, deploy, and execute the PIG UDFs. Then we'll talk about how we can use those PIG jobs using the PowerShell commandlets. And finally, we'll go ahead and talk about how we're going to run this PIG command by using the .NET SDK. Okay, so before I go ahead and talk about, many of you heard about the Hadoop platform and not heard about the SD Insight, so let me just give you an introduction about it. So SD Insight service is Microsoft offering in cloud, okay, and it basically provides the Hadoop platform behind the scenes. So that means you can run your big data solutions on cloud, which will save a lot of time of yours. With respect to, you can, provision your cluster very quickly. You can run your jobs, get the data out of it, and then if required, you can just, delete your cluster. That basically, also gives you a lot of ROI, which you might be interested in. We can talk about later offline if you want to. And the second thing is, the manageability part. It's easy because it's Microsoft offering on the cloud, so you don't have to do anything. If you go to the traditional on-prem Hadoop cluster, you have to create the cluster. You have to deploy various data nodes. You have to configure it, and all the stuff you have to do it. So there's a lot of admin work which is involved over there, and on top of it, you need to do development, and of course the maintenance as will include over there. Now with SD Insight service, because it's on cloud, what you need to do is just you can go ahead and create your cluster. I'll quickly go ahead and show you the sneak peek of it. Let's cancel it. So I'm just duplicate. For example, if I go in SD Insight, say new, and then I can go into the quick create or maybe custom create, depending on my business requirement. Here I can actually go ahead and create a cluster on of the various nodes. I can create 4 nodes, 8 nodes, 16 nodes, 32 nodes cluster. I can quickly go ahead and create it without any efforts. Behind the scenes, we'll go ahead and provision a cluster for you. We go ahead and provide the VMs and configure the Hadoop platform on top of it and give it to you. So you can run your jobs on the Hadoop cluster, which is there on the Azure, and then Once you're done with that, you can actually go ahead and drop it. And the reason of dropping it, you will get charged for the time till your cluster is up and running. For example, if your cluster is up and running for 1 hour, we're only going to charge for you, right? Now, because we store the storage outside the cluster, you don't have to be bothered about it once you drop your cluster, okay? Next time when you create a new cluster, you can just tell your cluster this is your storage, and it will automatically take the data, and you can, again start doing the computation on your data, right? So what is Pig? So Hadoop is, is a platform which basically written on Java, as many of you know, and if you want to run any particular jobs, you need to learn Java. Now, it's not easy for, many of us to learn the Java, right? Because we're already in SQL or .NET or maybe in any other programming language, right? So what happens is in the open source community, people said, okay, let's go ahead and create, new frameworks which will basically helps the user to run the MapReduce jobs without knowing the Java, okay? So, and you will find if you go into the Apache website, you will find various open source projects like Hive, Pig is one of them. You will find Mahout, Flume. So each of these projects has its own capabilities. I'm not going to talk about all. We're going to focus on Pig. But just to give you a background, these projects are also available, which you can utilize based on your business requirement. Okay. Now, Pig is, as I mentioned, is an open source project. If you really want to look onto the source code of the Pig, you can actually go ahead and do it. If you go to the Apache website, you can actually go ahead and look into the source code. And if you are a good or an expert in a Java and you want to contribute on it, you can go ahead and do that as well. Okay. Now, Pig uses a very high-level SQL-like programming languages, like basic functions like sort, filters, joins. You can actually go ahead and do with the Pig. Okay. Now, at some point of time, some people say it's different. It's not similar with the SQL, and the reason is, for example, if you want to in a SQL world, if you want to run a query, and then the outcome of the query you want to use on another query. So the first thing you do is you write a query, maybe you store the data into a temp file or a temp table, or maybe you write a subquery, right? Now in Pig, it's basically a structure-like language. It's pretty easy. You can step-by-step define. You don't have to be, store your data into the temporary tables or things like that. It's pretty easy. We'll talk about during the demonstration how we can go ahead and do that. Helps you to create MapReduce job without much complication. So it's very, if you're good in writing the scripts, you can actually go ahead and write your scripts and execute it. Now behind the scenes, the Pig engine which runs, it basically takes these scripts from you, and then it basically runs the MapReduce jobs for you. Okay? And when the results get computed, it basically sends it back to you via the engine itself. Okay? Can process the structure and unstructured data. So if you have the schema on the data, if you don't have the schema on the data, it's fine. I mean, it's not going to be a problem for the Pig. One of the notation of the Pig you will find on the web or maybe on the book is Pig eats anything. So that applies. Either you have the structure or unstructured, or don't bother about it. You can still go ahead and run the Pig scripts. It can run in a native or the MapReduce mode. So native mode means, if you don't have the SDFS file system, that if you don't have the Hadoop installation on your infrastructure, if you still want to run the Pig commands, you can actually go ahead and run it on the native mode. That's on your machine itself. You can go ahead and do it without installation of your Hadoop. Okay. But now these days, I've seen, most of the people run the MapReduce node because they have at least one node cluster. So even after the presentation, if you want to run your Pig scripts on your box, you can actually go ahead and install the SDI emulator. The SD Insight service I showed you onto the cloud, right? It's you can create a multiple nodes. However, with the SD Insight emulator, it's a single box installation. You can install it on your box and you can run your Pig jobs on it. Just for your testing purpose, you can play around it, how Pig works, what does the environment look like. You can go ahead and do that, okay? And it's designed to process data quickly. So as I mentioned, it basically behind the scenes, it has its own engine to optimize the queries that you're going to pass. and it's try to give the results faster, and they are keep improving that. So far, the latest version of Pig, which is there in the market, is 0.12, which is there with the Hadoop 2.0. Okay. Now this is what happens. You have your Pig scripts. You wrote some Pig scripts, and you said, okay, we go ahead and ready to run it. So what happens is the first thing is logical plan comes into the picture. So as soon as you're writing these scripts or these statements on your Pig framework, every script, every line which is compiled successfully, I mean that means there is no syntax error, it basically goes into the logical plan. Okay? Every line that you're going to write, if there is no syntax error, it goes to the logical plan. However, if there is any error, it basically then and there it tells you there is a syntax error, or maybe if there is any other error, it will let you know right then and there. Okay? Now, it will keep storing the syntaxes that you're writing until and unless you say load the data or dump the data. Okay? Now, I'm sorry, dump the data or store the data. Okay? Now, once you dump the data, it basically going to show the data onto the screen. If you say I want to store the data, you can actually go ahead and specify a location. So let's say if you're in a development environment and you want to run your Pig script and see what the results is going to come out, you can actually go ahead and use the dump command, and it will basically show you the data, which we're going to show in the demonstration as well. However, the another scenario where let's say you're running the Pig script for your business users, and your business user needs data, let's say on Friday or Saturday, whatever, right? So what you can do is you can schedule the scripts, and instead of dumping it, you can say store the output in a particular file location, right? So when the Pig script is going to execute, the end result is going to store onto that particular file. So that later point of time, if your business user, for example, using Excel, they can connect to the storage and take out the data, and they can start analyzing or mining the data, whatever they want to do it. Okay. So when we say dump or store the data, that's where all the queries goes to the physical plan, and it basically optimize your query for the better execution. That's where the physical plan comes into the picture. Okay. And once it's done that, it optimizes it. It basically sends to the MapReduce plan, where it basically generates the MapReduce queries for you and executes on your cluster, and send the results back to you. Okay. Now, during your writing your Pig scripts, if you want to look onto your logical, physical, or MapReduce plan, you can type explain command, which will basically give you the results. And I'll show it to you during the demonstration as well. All right, so that's all I have in terms of the slides. I've just had 2-3 slides because I knew that I'm going to encounter with the developers or administrators, right? I mean the technical folks, so I don't have much slides. So we'll get into the demo, and I'll just go ahead and minimize this, and I'm going to reshare my screen again. Just give me one quick minute. So I'm not sure why it's always get into the extended mode. It should not. On the cloud, cluster I've created on the cloud. I really want to show you that. But today morning when I came into the center, I got to know that I cannot do the RDP. Maybe there's some setting in the firewalls over here which does not allow me to connect to my VMs, which is deploy onto the cloud. So what I did is I basically installed SDI emulator on my laptop, which is a one-box solution. And once you install it, you will see these icons: Hadoop command line, Hadoop MapReduce status, Hadoop name node status. Okay, these 3 files you will get to know. And what you need to do is you need to open your Hadoop command line. And once you open it, this is how it's going to look like. Okay. If you go and Bing for the SDI emulator, you will get the installation. You can go ahead and install it. Once you install it, you can get into this particular console. Okay. Now I can run the SDFS command, which is related to the Hadoop. So let's say I say SDFS, that is Hadoop distributed file system, and then FS, I want to look into the file system, and then I'm going to say, show me the listing of the files under the user directory. Now if I'm going to have something, it's basically going to show it to me. And in the meantime, it's going to give me the results. If I go into the solution of Windows Explorer, if I go into the C drive, if I go into the Hadoop, you will see all this installation over here. My Hive, my Uzi, Pig, Scoop, traditional Hadoop, it gets installed over here. That's the location. Okay. Now why I'm showing you, because any error that you're going to get it onto your Pig framework, you may want to look into the log files. Okay. So where the Pig generates the log files, if you go into the Hadoop 1.1.0 snapshot, go into the logs, you will see something called pig underscore. Okay. So if I double click on it, it basically dumps all the information, which will basically help me for the troubleshooting. Okay. So if something is not working, I can actually get this information from here. That's the one way of looking into or to troubleshoot the environment. Okay. Every time we generate a new session, Pig basically going to create a new log file for you. Okay. So just be careful when you're going to look into the log files, because you're going to find multiple log files if you open the multiple Pig sessions in your environment. Okay. Now if I come back over here, you can see if I run the simple SDFS command, it basically gives me all the directory which gets stored over here. Okay. Now this is just to let you know that I have this file structure, and any Pig command that I'm going to run on the files which store in SDFS. Okay. So you can look into your SDFS, though you can run your SDFS command from the Pig framework, and I will show it to you. So now let's go one step back and go into the Pig directory. Right. Go to the bin folder, because that's where my executable is there. And if I click on the Pig, now once I'm going to click write Pig, it basically going to open the Pig framework for me, where I can write my Pig scripts or my Pig statements, and what we call is grunt shell. Okay, you can see it basically pointing its grunt over there. Right. Now I can actually go ahead and run my commands over here. Now what commands? So the first of all, what I want to do is I basically want to load some data so that I can play with this data. Right. That's the very first requirement that I have. So what I'll do is, instead of typing the scripts, I already have the scripts ready with me. So I'll just go ahead and copy it, and I'll explain you. So if I go into the lab one, and you see I have two scripts, one node script and the scripts. So earlier I created the script .txt, which basically connecting to the SD inside on the cloud. But today morning I get to know it's not going to work for me, so I create another script files just to showcase to you. Okay. So look at the command over here. So I'm going to say load this particular file, which is there on my SDFS. Okay. And what I'm going to load is, I'm basically giving a schema to it. Okay. If you don't know the schema of it, if you have unstructured data in it, don't provide. That's up to you. You can load it without the schema as well. Okay. Now, if you gonna load your data without the schema, then how you gonna refer it? You're gonna refer it by the column numbers, right? $0, $1, $2, $3. These are the column numbers. Okay. However, in my case, I provided the schema, and I've created an alias of it. Okay. So salaries will basically gonna load all this data. So if I go ahead and copy this and paste it in my grunt shell. Okay. And let's say, so right now, what it does is, as I mentioned in the logical plan, physical plan, when we're talking about, how Pig run behind the scenes, at this point of time, this particular statement of line goes to the logical plan, right? At this point of time, nothing gonna happen, it's not gonna execute it, okay? Now, let's go ahead and say dump salaries. Now that's where it's basically gonna go from logical plan to the physical plan, gonna gets optimized, and then it basically gonna go to the MapReduce phase, and it's gonna create the MapReduce job for me and send the results back. So probably somewhere it basically shows you if it's gonna run the MapReduce 50% map complete and things like that. It'll show it on the screen itself. And salary is what we call, when we say salary is equals to load this particular data, your salaries is basically typically called as an alias. So it's an alias, okay? Now, once it gets done, basically what we're going to do is we're going to play around with this particular alias and do some more operation on that alias. That means I'm going to play more with this data. You see that? MapReduce launcher 50% complete, and there you go. Here's my data. All right? Now let's go ahead and play with this data. So I'm going to say, I'm going to filter my salaries where my income is greater than some number. Okay? So now you can see my salaries is my alias. I'm going to use that, and I'm telling that I want to take out the data where the salaries is greater than some value. Okay? And that information I'm going to store in another alias, which is called high salaries. So I'll go ahead and copy and paste that. Let me just go ahead and copy it and paste it. Right? Now, it basically created again alias for me by the name of high salaries. Okay? So dump, I've already did it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say describe this particular alias. Many times, when you are in the programming job, when you're writing the scripts, you might not remember, what particular schema that you have defined for your data. So that's where the describe is come to the picture. Any alias you say describe it. It basically tells you it's your high salary, you have gender, you have age, income, zip. Yeah, that's all. Okay? As I mentioned that you can also use the explain, which basically shows your logical, physical, and your MapReduce plan. So if you want to see it, you can just say explain and the alias name. And if I go a little up, at the bottom it should be my MapReduce plan. Right? You can see my MapReduce plan is there. And then it will have my physical plan. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, this is my physical plan. And then I'm going to have my logical plan as well. There you go. Right? And if I'm going to say illustrate the high salaries, it's basically going to give me some records, not all the records, and show me how it's going to look like. You see, it's run it for some data, not all the data, just to, as a developer to know what information it's stored in that particular schema, so that I can actually go ahead and use those column names or column numbers, whatever I want to use it. Okay? All right, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to. Is there any ID for the pig scripts? So, as I mentioned, this entire platform is on Java. You have Eclipse for Java, right? So, there is a plugin for the pig, which you can plug the Eclipse, and you can actually go ahead and write your pig scripts over there as well, if you want to. So you can run, your complex formulas into the pig. However, in the situation, maybe like you're in that situation where you need to do some customization. Maybe some functions may not be available where you want to apply your own logic. That's where you can actually use the user-defined functions. You can write your own user-defined function. I'll quickly go ahead and show it to you in the demo as well, how you're going to do it in the Eclipse environment, and how you can register that, and then how you can use it in your scripts. So you can go ahead and do that, and you need to create your own UDFs. Okay. All right. Okay. The another example that I'm going to show you. Let me just show you the data first. That's my sample.log files. There's some IS logs, very basic logs that I have it on my screen. It basically have all the warning, trace, error. Let's say in an application that you have created, how many times error comes in, how many times debug or trace are there, or information messages are there. All this information is stored in this particular file. Okay. Now I want to analyze it to find out, how many, let's say, error are there, so that I can go ahead and exclude my developers. Okay, and tell them that these are the number of errors that we are encountering in our application. Better go ahead and fix that. Okay. Any warnings, we can actually go to look at how many warnings that we are getting, so that we can optimize our web application. Okay. So I've already have this data load. Command is same, which we used earlier. Create an alias and then load the file. Now once I'm done with that, I'll go ahead and show it to one by one. Right. So log file, which is already there on my SDFS. Okay. Now here I'm using the inbuilt function. So you can see I'm using the regex extract function, which basically gonna find out these these texts from that particular log file, right? So I'm saying for each logs is my alias, generate as a log level. That means I'm creating one more alias levels where all this information will be there. So let me just go ahead and run this command and show it to the output. I'll say, right, and let's go ahead and dump it for now. Dump levels. And in the meantime, it's running. So the next step is I'm basically gonna filtering out, right? So I'm gonna say now I have my levels. So wherever I have null, just go ahead and filter it out because I don't want that. So I'll just copy this. In the meantime, behind the scenes, the query is executing. And you can see that at the last line it says job ID is equal to job 2014042512229_009. So that's your job ID. When you go into the MapReduce, troubleshooting on the MapReduce, it basically identify by this job. So for example, any job that I submit to the Hadoop environment, it's going to create a job ID for me. Okay, and from that job ID, I can actually go ahead and look into what all happened in this particular job, under this particular job, right? Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for Hadoop to figure out which jobs run who, right? So it generates a job ID, and so that later point of time, if something goes wrong, you can actually take this job ID, go to the MapReduce, probably if you go and look into the Hadoop MapReduce status. Here it basically shows you those jobs ID, and you can actually go ahead and drill down. So if I go running, you see these job IDs over there? These are the job ID that I was talking about. So you can drill down and find out how many tasks has been run and things like that. So let's go back, and you can see it basically gives me the results. All the debug, trace, everything is found. It gets stored in that particular alias. And I have some null values as well. And the top you can see it doesn't contain anything. That means it doesn't have anything in it. So next job is just go ahead and filter it out because I don't want that. Okay. So I'll do that. And once I'm done with that, I'll probably go ahead and dump that result. So what I'm expecting that it gives me the same results, but it's not going to give me any null values. And while it's running the job, if you go to the MapReduce over here, it should show you under the running jobs. So when it's going to start, it basically going to come under the running jobs. And as soon as your jobs gets completed, it basically listed on the completed jobs. You see the running jobs, so now it shows some results for. So this is the one job which is running. Because I've executed a command, I'll get the list of it over here. Okay. So you can drill down and see how many mappers are there, how many reducer has been taken place. And then you can further drill down if you want to troubleshoot your MapReduce program. Okay. And this is relevant to a Hive or general MapReduce program that you're going to run. Okay. Now you can see it filtered out all the nulls, and I don't have any nulls over here. Okay. Now the next step is I'm basically going to group all these log levels, and I'm going to use the inbuilt function by the name of group. And now you can see, every stage I basically created a new alias, right? So any point of time when you're writing the pig script, if you want to use the previous alias, you can go ahead and do that. Okay. So I'll go ahead and use this, and I'll go ahead and paste it over here, and then I'm going to dump this result. Just to show you how it's going to look like when you group it. So because I believe it's better to visualize rather than speaking and try to make picture in your mind. So when it's going to seen in the screen, it will give you more clarity. So that's why I'm going to dump it. Otherwise, I could have been run the entire script at once and say dump the results. We can see the results, but that's not my intention. I just want to show you that how it's going to work and how at each and in every step you can look. So these are the various, dump, illustrate, explain. These are the various good functions which you can use it when you are working with the pig. And in the meantime, it's running. Let's go ahead and look into the next step. Now what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to group all these log levels. Okay. And I'm going to count them. Okay. So my entire goal is to find out how many times we encounter error in my website, how many times I got the information message in my website. So I'm basically going to do a count, and now you see that it basically groups. So first you'll see all the info, then you'll see all debug, and then you'll see all the trace. Okay. Now the next thing is go ahead and paste it, and just go ahead and dump this out. Just go ahead and copy. Huge amount of data, then probably the chances are you're gonna miss something, or you may get lost somewhere in between. So MapReduce launcher, and it's done. So now you can see on that particular log files I have 96 information messages. Fine. I have 11 warnings. I have 434 debug warnings. I have 6 errors, 2 fatal errors probably, and 816 traces, right? So I can actually go ahead and now talk to my developers and tell them that this is the situation of my IIS log or my web application that is running on the IIS, and you need to go ahead and look into that and fix it out. Okay? Cool. Any questions so far? Yep. Mm-hmm. This emulator is in Windows, that's correct. So, I'm sorry? Hadoop on Windows, yeah. So there is one is provided by the Hortonworks. Okay. So let me tell you this, just to give you a little more clarification. So when Microsoft, thought to let's get into the big data world, we have two options. One, we can actually go ahead and reinvent the wheel, or maybe we can, another option is whatever is there available, just adopt it. Okay. So rather than reinventing, we thought, okay, let's go ahead and bring this open source Hadoop into the Windows. Okay. So what we did is we basically did the partnership with Hortonworks. There's a company called Hortonworks. We partnership with them, and they help us to bring the Hadoop platform onto the Windows. Okay. So if you install SDI emulator, which is a one-box solution, behind the scenes you will somewhere find Hortonworks or SDP, okay, which is a trademark of Hortonworks. So there's two things you can do. You can install the SDI emulator. If you want pre-configured VMs, I think Hortonworks site has those pre-configured VMs that you can download and play with it. Okay, but this is one-box solution. You can install on your laptop, on your desktop, and you can play around with the Hadoop. It's the same as Apache, right? Customized for Windows, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. we have .NET SDK. I hope you're talking about .NET framework, right? So we have .NET SDK. I'll show you an example of that as well. So you need to install those SDK on your Visual Studio environment. And once you install it, it'll give you certain libraries. You can use it, and you can write your MapReduce program as well. That's doable. Okay. All right. If there's no further question, let's go ahead and look into the another demo. And let me just close some of the files just to avoid some confusions. Not here. And then let me just go to the lab 3. Okay. In this particular scenario, what I'm going to do is I basically have two files. One contains the stock price information of the companies, which I've downloaded from the web. Okay. I think InfoChimps, that's a site from where I download some data. And then I have ticker symbol. So I'll probably can show you, that will make more sense to you guys. So as I mentioned, if you look into the stock price, it basically contains information about the company, the symbol probably, not the company's sending the command to the, this is weird. Okay. You can see I have the symbol, I have the year, opening price, closing price, and highest, and the volume and the closing price as well. So that's the information I have. Okay. I have uploaded onto the SDFS on my Hadoop, and then I have a ticker symbol, now which basically contains the information about the symbol, and that particular symbol represents to which company. So that information I have in this particular file. So both the files are there on my Hadoop environment. Okay. Right. So let's go ahead and open my script. Okay. Now the first query, we already discussed about it. I'm just going to load the data so that I can play around with it. And you can use these examples for, to demonstrate to your client and customer how fast it's going to be with some limits of data. And then I can go ahead and, because sometimes I heard from people that they said it's very hard for them to learn Java and run the MapReduce job, right? So what should we do? So they can either go for high or pick. It will be easy for them. So now I've loaded both the data. Okay. Now it might so happen, when I'm working with the data, I have let's say 100 columns in my sheet. So probably I might not interested in all the data. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take limited set of data over here. So you can see I'm saying generate stock symbol, year, and high. Only these 3 columns I'm interested in. So that's what I'm going to take, those 3 column information, and I'm going to create an alias for that. Once I'm done with that, I'll just take one more, which is the second one, which contains my ticker symbol, right? So I'll go ahead and use that as well. And once I'm done with that, joins, I can go ahead and do the, use the joins as well as we do it in SQL, right? So here's an example of inner join over here. I'll just go ahead and use that. So say join, name of the alias on which column, and with the second alias and with the column, right? And if you want to do the left auto join, you can go ahead and do that as well. The syntax is right there on the third line from the selected line. Join alias by column, left outer alias by column. Okay. Let's go ahead and execute this. And now I'll go ahead and take the result. And once I'm done with that, I can just go ahead and dump it. I'm going to say dump result. Physical plan will now optimize your queries or the plan, okay? And then it will send it to the MapReduce plan, from where it generates the MapReduce jobs for you. So there you go. Right? So now I get my, what do you call the symbol, I get the company name, and I get all this information, the high price for that particular year as well, right? So you can actually go ahead and take the entire stock from the website, let's say last 10 or 20 years of data. You can dump it on your Hadoop cluster. You can run this simple pig script, and it basically gives you this data, which you can actually put it onto your Excel, and you can create a graph or analyze the way you want. Or maybe if you want to do data mining, you can go ahead and do that. Okay. I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and show it to you in the bottom. Let it get run. Execute it somewhere over here. There you go. I'm going to create my pig job and execute it. Once I execute it, any results or any error that I'm going to get it, I basically display based on the outcome. Okay. It might take some time to execute because it's going to now talk to my SD Insight cluster, which is there on the cloud, and going to run submit this pig job, and it's going to execute over there. You can use it actually with a single node. You can do it. But the only thing is, because I get to know last minute that I cannot connect to my SD Insight cluster, so I don't have time to convert it into the one node. Any other question? All right, I think it's gonna take some time. Do you want to hold, or shall I go ahead and hook off? Because I think I'm out of time. Next presenter, maybe next speaker is gonna waiting for me. Hive. So it actually depends. If you're like T-SQL more, then probably you're gonna go for the Hive. But if you like the expression language, writing scripts, then Pig is gonna be the option for you. Both of them designed for the same purpose. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So I'll just take it out. But if anyone wants to look into the results, we can connect offline. So with that, thank you very much for your time and listening to me. And here is my contact information in case if you want to get in touch with me. Please do so. I don't know how can I move it little here. So that's my Facebook or LinkedIn. My email ID is sudhir@microsoft.com. That's where you can get in touch with me if you have any questions or anything for me.